Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. We're continuing our lineup prediction series as we are in the Eastern Conference today on the East Coast as we take a look at your Carolina Hurricanes back in the Metropolitan Division. After winning the Central Division last year, the Carolina Hurricanes made some interesting moves this summer, letting a lot of guys go, bringing in a lot of new guys, and even giving it an offer sheet and getting some revenge on the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll be taking a look at all of that in today's video. So looking at the forward lines for your Carolina Hurricanes, a little bit of an interesting look, and we'll get to that with Kotkaniemi. Looking at your top six, though, Andrei Svechnikov and Teuvo Teravainen alongside Sebastian Aho down the middle. Svechnikov, your pure goal-scoring sniper. Sebastian Aho, your kind of two-way center, gets back-checking wise and forechecking. And Teuvo Teravainen, who is the passer, also scores a couple of goals here and there. That's a really good top line. I think Rod Brind'Amour and Don Waddell are quite pleased with what they have with that top line. And I don't really see anything that's going to deviate from that being the top line at this point. I'm very confident in that top line at this point. The second line could get a little interesting, but for the most part, I think this is pretty set in stone. Nino Niederreiter, Vincent Trocheck, and Marty Necas. And I don't really see any of those guys getting kicked out of their spot. Vincent Trocheck, a very good second-line center, especially with what Carolina gave up for him. He's a really talented guy. Nino Niederreiter had a really good season for the Carolina Hurricanes last season. And also Marty Necas. I think Necas is going to actually be a prime example of what Montreal maybe misstepped with Kotkaniemi. Let him play on the wing in the top six and then make him a center. And I think you're seeing that right now with Marty Necas with his development, gaining some confidence on the wing, putting up some points, winning some hockey games, getting on deep playoff runs. Eventually he will become a center in the NHL, and I think they're kind of looking to do the same thing with another guy, and we're going to get to that here on the third line. Yeah, Ryan Suzuki, Jordan Staal, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And this is an interesting line because just a week ago, this was not your line. And the thing is, you look at their top three centers, let's be honest. You're not giving Kotkaniemi $6.1 million this season to play fourth-line center. How can you argue he takes any of those spots from Sebastian Aho, Vincent Trocheck, or Jordan Staal? No. I don't think that's the plan here for Jesperi Kotkaniemi with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's going to be a winger. And the reason I say that is just what I mentioned with Marty Necas. Keep the guy on the wing, let him put up some points, gain some confidence, get some wins under his belt, and then you could move him to center and let him work his way to that role. There are very few guys that could jump into the NHL, play center, and just be that good. We're talking about guys like Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. Those guys aren't every season. And Jesperi Kotkaniemi, despite being a top three pick, isn't necessarily ready for that role yet. And I think him on the wing on the third line, let him kind of work his minutes, work for him to get into that top six, and maybe by the end of the season, he ends up taking a role from a guy like Nino Niederreiter. Maybe he becomes a second-line player. I could eventually jump to that center role. And eventually, at some point, the Carolina Hurricanes could have Sebastian Aho, Marty Necas, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi as your top three centers. That's a pretty solid group as guys like Trocheck and Jordan Staal get older. Your fourth line, a couple of former Rangers here. You got Jordan Martinook, who's not, but you got Derek Stepan and Jesper Fast. Two guys that I think really are interesting here. Is Fast coming back? I know he's had some injury issues. You also got Derek Stepan, who comes over from Ottawa. And I think Derek Stepan could add a nice bit of veteran leadership and really solidifies their center core. You could argue Derek Stepan could be a third-line center. Probably better off as a fourth-line center on a real competitive playoff team. And I think he wants to win a Stanley Cup. And I think seeing what Carolina did last year, if it weren't for the Tampa Bay Lightning, you could argue they could have gone to the Eastern Conference Finals again last year. They were a really good team. Now, looking at some of their depth, you got guys like Josh Levo and Steven Lorentz. And we know Rod Brind'Amour did like Steven Lorentz at points last year. He was playing third and fourth line minutes. So we could see Steven Lorentz return to that form again at some point. But again, with guys like Kotkaniemi coming into the fold and Ryan Suzuki, it may have taken a role from a guy like Lorentz going into this season. Looking at your defense of the Carolina Hurricanes, a couple of big changes, a couple of big losses. Guys like Jake Bean, Dougie Hamilton, they let some big name guys go, and even some depth guys like Yanni Hakanpää. So this defense is going to look fairly different this year. You've got Jacob Slavin and Brett Pesce as your top pair. I don't really have any qualms about that. I think that's still a really good defense for the most part. Again, Jacob Slavin, we know what he has become over the last 2 years. I really like him as a player. Now, your second pairing, you got a couple former Rangers again, and I don't know how I like this pair. You got Brady Shea and Tony DeAngelo. And I think the problem with Brady Shea is I just don't think he's a second pairing defenseman. He's getting paid like a second pairing defenseman. But over the past 2 or 3 years, has he been a second pairing defenseman? And I could see that being an issue long term for the Hurricanes. But with that said, you're relying on him being a shutdown defenseman, playing alongside Tony DeAngelo, on the other hand, who's a very offensive minded, really doesn't play any defenseman, and I think that's kind of what you're looking at with these two. Tony DeAngelo is, they're seeing him as the next Dougie Hamilton to replace him at a much cheaper price than that $9 million tag he just got in New Jersey this summer. So we'll see what happens. I think there's definitely some volatility with the second and third pairing, but and we'll get to that. Now you got your third pair. You got Ian Cole and Ethan Bear, so a completely new third pair. I do like Ian Cole. I think getting bounced around the Midwest last year may have messed him up a little bit. Maybe going into Carolina, knowing from the start of the season he'll be in Carolina, may be a good thing for him. He played with the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild last season. Now he'll get a chance in Carolina on the East Coast again, like he was in Pittsburgh winning Stanley Cups. This could be a nice veteran guy on that back end. As well as Ethan Bear, he needed a change of scenery. A rough season in Edmonton last year, especially in the playoffs. So we're expecting some good stuff from him. You also got your depth. You got another former Ranger, Brendan Smith, coming in on a one-year deal. He's just a depth defenseman. I don't see him as anything more than a seventh pairing defenseman. And you also have Maxime Lajoie, who came over on waivers last year. I think there is some potential out of him as a depth defenseman. Maybe not a top 6 pairing defenseman, but a depth defenseman. And I think he could be a guy that could jump in for maybe 15, at most 20 games per year just to fill in. And again, the Carolina Hurricanes, who Tom Dundon and Don Waddell want maybe a cheaper or more economically attractive team, guys like Lajoie and Smith are the better options. Now, in between the pipes, a complete makeover. They've let go of Peter Mrazek, now a member of the Maple Leafs. James Reimer, who is now out on the West Coast in San Jose with the Sharks. And you also let go of Alex Nedeljkovic, who is potentially the next heir to the throne. Carolina didn't want to sign him to the deal he wanted. He ends up going to the Detroit Red Wings. So now you've got Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta as your goaltending tandem. And I think these two guys have had... I think Anderson wants to get another chance. He needed a change of scenery from Toronto. He was kind of pushed out at the end of the day, and the Leafs just needed to make a change, and that's what they did with Anderson. I think there really could have been something done there, so he's going to look to prove them wrong. And you also have Antti Raanta, who, maybe has lost a little bit of that competitive spirit in Arizona. He's still been a very good goaltender, no doubt, but he hasn't been with a team that's been competitive and good and a potential playoff team. He's been away from that environment since his time back with the New York Rangers. So getting that edge back may be exactly what a guy like Raanta needs. Overall, I think this team is pretty solid. I think there are still questions because a lot of these are new faces. I mean, you look at their forward group, you've got 1, 2, 3 new names up front and 3 new names on the back end. So you're just expecting a lot of turnover is a little bit, you should be cautious of that. And I think the Hurricanes had probably the best defense in the NHL last year. I mean, maybe besides Tampa. But maybe they realized that, listen, we thought we had a really good team last year on paper. at the end of the day, Tampa Bay was a better team. If they threw the same team that they did last year out there on the ice, they weren't confident that they could go on a deep playoff run. And they think with this team that maybe things could change this year. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Carolina Hurricanes forward group? In particular, who do you think should be that second line center? Should it be Vincent Trocheck? Should it be Marty Necas? Or potentially the new guy, Jesperi Kotkaniemi? Let me know your thoughts down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, make sure to check out our link in the description down below. We've got our Streamlabs shop where you can buy some Goal Line Hockey swag. Got some backpacks, coffee mugs, sweatshirts, t-shirts, even a hat. If you're interested in any of that, make sure to check that out down below to support the channel. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.